What's up? Welcome into today's episode of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. It's the start of the NFL league year. It's the start of NFL free agency tampering period, and it's nuts. It has come
crazy.
fast. First 3 hours of this have been, every year it's crazy, but I think this one is insane, even comparatively. And like the biggest news of the day just came down as we're about to start the show. You say Tunsil to the Commanders, and I'm like, Tunsil to the Commanders? Yeah, Tunsil just got traded. Larry Tunsil, left tackle for the Houston Texans, just got traded to the Washington Commanders. It's been insane.
You know, and it's just seemingly all day. The same stuff that I complain about with the NCAA, I can't keep up because everybody's on new teams all the time, and there's no more, honor in the game. Well, I just feel like more and more in the NFL now, we've seen these huge deals going to guys leaving their teams. Obviously, free agency has been a lot of fun for a long time, but now more than ever, I feel like this thing has just gone complete circus show. I'm interested to hear your take on that stance there, that it's getting even crazier year after year. And the numbers are so big. The numbers are just so big that guys are pretty much getting gambled on by these teams for essentially what end up being max deals at the time. I think about Dan Moore Jr., the offensive tackle, and I'm like, it's like $80 million, Mike Renner. But that's it's 2025, baby, and I'm all about players getting paid. But I'm just kind of laughing at how this process goes.
Yeah, it goes back to kind of what we talked about Joel Corey last week about how when the cap rises, darn near 10% every single year, like clockwork, you'll have teams that can make some put your chips to the edge sort of plays, throw out some money that they wouldn't otherwise to try to maximize the window. And well, you're seeing it now with the Washington Commanders, the trade they made at the deadline for Marshall Lattimore, this trade for Laremy Tunsil that we don't quite have the package of picks that Abtash is reporting. I don't see what's coming down with it yet, but it's not going to be cheap. Laremy Tunsil is top 3 left tackle in the NFL. Guys, one of the best pass protectors.
Worth it.
But it's worth it. If you're in that window, it's worth it to make plays like that. So we'll get to that when we get some news on what the actual compensation is. But we're going to run through here on today's show all the top 50 free agents on Pete Prisco's free agent list that have signed already. We're going to run through all of those, grade them, and then we're going to go talk about some of our notable ones who aren't top 50 free agents that maybe got paid like they were top 50 free agents by Aaron Banks. And then we're going to go to re-signings that we saw from over the weekend, some extensions that we saw from over the weekend, some trades that we saw from over the weekend at the end of the show. So let's kick it off, though, with Sam Darnold. Pete Prisco's number 1 free agent goes to the Seattle Seahawks. This one felt like we haven't talked about the Geno Smith trade yet. Once that one went down, you knew the Seahawks had their eyes on someone. They weren't just getting rid of Geno Smith and saying, yeah, we'll just go into the draft and see what the heck happens. They were going in with a plan, and the plan was 3 years, $110.5 million for Sam Darnold. Do we like this move?
You know what? I do like it. And going back to the Geno Smith situation where you said he's leaving, obviously they should have a plan. They can't just leave the keys in nobody's hands. For them to go out and get Sam Darnold and convince him to leave Minnesota, because, I'm not saying I know what the numbers were going to be in Minnesota if he were to stay there, but they wouldn't be gaudy, and nor are the numbers for Sam Darnold going to Seattle. I think it's 3 years. He's going to be making, $21 million a year or something like that. It pales in comparison to the deal that he could be getting because of what happened at the end of the year. And I don't want to understate that or overstate that enough. The guy had an opportunity to have a swing vote in this contract dispute, and it would have ended up being what would the number have been there, Mike, if he goes out and wins a couple of those, if he wins one of those 2 games, gets eliminated like the other 31 teams, but doesn't absolutely make the pee go down his leg at the end of the season, we could be looking at a complete opposite deal. So for Seattle, you get a guy who is 1 game away from being a $50 million a year type quarterback, and you get him at this reduced rate. I think it's good for Seattle. They're obviously going to be starting over there offensively with a new quarterback. Who better to do it than a savvy vet who has proven that he's gotten better as time has gone on?
Yeah, I think in the last 2 games, if I were just guesstimate, I think he would have ended up somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years between 125 and 150 if he really put them, put better foot forward those final 2 games. Now, if he went on to win a Super Bowl, he's way over 3 years, 150.
Yeah,
it's crazy. He might even be signing that with the Vikings right now. But 3 years, 110 for what we saw. To me, it's two things. It's one, Geno's 34, Sam Darnold's 27. You are 6.5 years younger at the position now. So basically, like that peak of Geno Smith's career, like where Sam Darnold's at, age 27 to 34.
Still going.
That's your peak at the quarterback. That is where you should be at maximum power. So you're getting him at that spot in his career. And you're getting a guy who, for Clint Kubiak's offense, I think is a better fit. For what they ran last year with Ryan Grubb, it was a drop back passing offense that fits Geno Smith's strength. That's what he can do. This is going to be much more run heavy, play action heavy. That attack down the football field, that's where Sam Darnold was at his best a year ago. So I think that's the calculus they made was how do we, for head coach in the NFL, GM in the NFL, how do I get myself job security? And how do I maximize the talent on this roster? Because you went from this three-headed monster of wide receivers that could operate this drop back heavy passing offense in DK Metcalf, in Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba to just Jackson Smith-Njigba and pretty much a number 2 wide receiver that we don't even know. We don't know who it's going to be at this point. So I think they're much better set up going this route than trying to run it back the way they did. So I give it a B+. I give it some
and where he's been, he's going to be taking with him a wealth of knowledge. He's not only going to be helped by that staff in Seattle, he's going to be able to help the staff in Seattle with the ways that he saw the game through Kevin O'Connell's eyes. And I think that's a really big part of having a guy like that in the building. It's important. And I know I'm going to get killed for saying he got signed for 20 a year, but he got signed for $55 million guaranteed. So in my eyes, that's about 20 per year. That's look inside the locker room. That's the way that we see it. Because tomorrow I could break my shoelace walking out to practice. And what are you leaving with? The 55.
Yes. So before we keep going on contracts, I want to say to that point, we don't know how these contracts are set up at this point. That matters a lot in terms of how much they're actually going to end up getting from it, how much cap implications there are. So when you see these raw numbers, especially when it's for a guy who you're like, how the heck did he get that contract? I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's because there are either some funny money, some funny years, some stuff going on where he ain't probably going to get that much money. So always, always, always take the initial reporting with a grain of salt for the total about what it's going to be. And if you really care about this, go dive into the contract sort of structure later on overthecap.com. I highly recommend it if you are very interested in this stuff. Next one. That's not going to stop us from opining, though, just loosely on the show here. Next one, Josh Sweat. It's one of my favorite deals so far. Goes to the Arizona Cardinals. 4 years, $76.4 million. That's not even $20 million per year that we saw guys like Osa Odigizua inking before free agency even started. Yes, this is his third contract, not his second contract, but his third contract still coming at only 27 years old, turns 28 later this month. So that 4-year deal takes you from age 28 to your early 30s. Yeah, he's probably going to start to decline by the end of it. But for less than $20 million a year for a team that's desperately in need of any pass rush they can get, I gave this one an A. I love this deal for the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I do as well. And to be honest, my only real knowledge about like positional need and stuff like that outside of just watching the Arizona Cardinals play is from you. And you've talked about their need for guys on the interior and obviously on the exterior of that front to be able to get after the quarterback. That's such a difference maker in this league, the ability to get after the quarterback. And if you don't have real winners, you can only X and O your way into getting pressures and sacks so many times before teams start saying, hey, these are the tendencies. One thing you can't prepare for is just getting beat, and Josh Sweat allows you to have that kind of success at the line of scrimmage. So it's a big deal for the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to give it a B+.
All right, and obviously reunification here with Jonathan Gannon, former DC of the Philadelphia Eagles, now Arizona Cardinals head coach. And I think now pick 16 for the Arizona Cardinals, you could pretty much pencil that into a defensive tackle, unless they really make a move. But you think you can pencil that into a defensive tackle with how they've addressed the edge, because obviously it's strong DT class, also strong edge class. And the guy that everyone, I think, was painting the tea leaves to go to the Arizona Cardinals, who we're talking about next, Milton Williams, doesn't go to Arizona, doesn't go to the Carolina Panthers, as some people reported earlier. That one was not actually finalized. He goes to the New England Patriots. 4 years, $104 million, $26 million a year, becomes the third highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. by Chris Jones,
Yep.
Christian Wilkins. We said it was going to be a big number. Boy, was it ever.
That's a huge number there, bud. You whip that number out, you might scare some people. And this is the type of move that you expect a guy like Mike Vrabel to be able to bring in. And obviously the list is really long of the guys who signed up to go be a part of that pirate ship in New England again. Under new leadership with Mike Vrabel, we've seen them make signing after signing here. They've been one of the most active teams, if not, Mike. I mean, I may be corrected, but the Patriots have been just pounding the table for guys and being able to get them so much money. And Milton Williams is the type of guy. I have it written down here in my notes. You said 26 per year behind Chris Jones and Christian Wilkins. Perfect guy for Vrabel to point out in meetings and say, be like this guy. You know, and obviously we love the way the defensive tackles play because we're ball lovers. But a coach who has a defensive tackle who can set the tempo and let you know what's going on every day in practice. A guy in the middle, he sets the tone for the physicality. And a guy like Milton Williams will have to step up. With Godchaw out of there, they're going to need him to step up big time.
Now you're paying two different defensive tackles there in New England, Christian Barmore being the other, over $20 million a year. My only worry about this, and why I'm going to go B+, is because you're giving up a lot in run defense with those two guys in the football field. They are pass rushers first. Now that's where you obviously win in today's NFL. It's not like, that run defenders are easier to find than guys that move the needle like Milton Williams. This is why you pay him. But when Milton Williams and Christian Barmore are out there, you do not have hold the point run defenders. You may be giving up a little in that regard. So I do worry about from that perspective, considering their run defense was still a problem a year ago. So that's really the only thing keeping me from going higher. I love Milton Williams. I don't think the money's too much with where the money's going at this position. His PFS highest pass rushing grade at DT last year. So big fan of his game. It's just the fit specifically in New England, I think is a little bit worrisome.
In another world, he takes way less and continues to dominate in Philadelphia. But I mean, you got to get your bread.
You got your ring. You get your ring.
Get your rings. They have an opportunity to do something crazy there. And it's just an exodus right now, Philadelphia.
It is. Zach Bondo.
Zach Bondo. Hey, shout out to Zach Bond, dude.
Yeah, we'll get to him a little bit later. Next up, Drew Dahlman. You've been pumping the table for this one, beating it down.
This is a no-doubter. No doubt.
That was just like a fastball center cut.
Yep.
Sitting on it. Batting practice. Out the park. 3 years, $42 million. Goes to the Bears to be their center. Now, brand new left guard, center, right guard. Do we think we see a new left tackle by the end of this offseason for Chicago Bears?
You know what? I think that they are going to be getting on the space shuttle with the names that we've seen. I mean, you never know. They could absolutely draft somebody in the middle rounds or be able to find a piece that they're more comfortable with the tackle position. But I think as for right now, having that big building block at right tackle with Darnell Wright and then going and outfitting the interior of this offensive line, you and I both know we can scheme a little bit now for that left tackle. We've got some guys who can win one-on-ones. You have the ability to slide. Joe Thuney, one of the best guys at keeping an inside eye at the inside hip pocket of that left tackle spot. I'll be interested to see what they do. But either way, the Chicago Bears, I'm going to give this one an A+. And really, it's an A+ because of the fact that we've been saying Drew Dahlman would fit well. They're going to have some beasts at the guard position. They went out and signed Joe Thuney. They've made big moves at the guard position, and they invested in the draft with Darnell Wright. So this thing is it's all rolling along as it should be. I was worried for a while. There was no activity at the train station, but the trains are rolling now, and they're high speed. And it's an offensive line-centric football team in front of Caleb Williams. When he is upright, things that are not supposed to happen physically happen. Caleb Williams can make plays if you can give him some time. He's even better off schedule. But imagine him with a clean dish, being able to set back there under Ben Johnson's tutelage, being able to implement that, whatever that tailor-made to Caleb Williams offense looks like, we're going to be able to see it in a cleaner sense with the investment they've made. A+. Kudos to Ryan Poles.
I went A-, but they did get a steal in this one, in my opinion. I mean, $14 million a year for him with where the market is going, who was the top center on the free agent market and apparently turned down bigger deals because he wanted to be a Chicago Bear. So
wanted to be a Bear, dude.
I wanted to be a Bear. All right, next one. DJ Reed, Jets cornerback, goes to the Detroit Lions. 3 years, $48 million to replace Carlton Davis, who we'll talk about right after this, who went to the New England Patriots. I love this one, man. I think we talked about it last week, and I was like, I either said he should be a Lion, will be a Packer, or should be a Packer, will be a Lion. I think
you wanted him to be a Packer.
I wanted him to be a Packer, but this guy ends up a Detroit Lion, and I think this is
and now we hate him. And now we hate him
upgrade
because it's on the Lions.
We do, but for that price, $16 million. He's 28 years old.
Yeah,
should be useful for the life of that deal. I think it's an A. He just fits their ethos defensively.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head at the end when you said he fits their ethos defensively. I would say he fits their ethos overall. And I talked about Vrabel putting the laser pointer on a guy like Milton Williams in the meeting and be like, do what this guy does. DJ Reed is not only fantastic in coverage, but he's active in the run game. He's a physical guy. He likes to get down and dirty. He's going to fit perfectly in the Detroit Lions secondary. And obviously with the exodus there with Carlton Davis, they're going to need somebody to hold up that point. And yeah, I'm going to go B+. I don't give the Lions A's on anything. Detroit, that's the real rival in the NFC. We're buddies. Green Bay, Chicago, we're buddies. We just, we get a little sloppy drunk around each other. We just can't stand the Lions, though.
I love your rivalry with the Lions because they did like nothing to you over the course of your career. I feel like
they beat us all the time.
But they just they stunk for like the vast majority.
We all stunk,
years, but maybe they did. Yeah, very fair, very fair. All right, let's go to the Carlton Davis, New England Patriots. 3 years, $60 million, massive deal for him. That makes him, what is that? The 6th highest paid cornerback in the NFL. Could be higher very shortly, giving Jair Alexander if he gets released. But big said, New England Patriots, they went from having Christian Gonzalez and some shrimps at cornerback. They had a small cornerback group outside of him with Jonathan Jones is 5'9". Marcus Jones is 5'9". This gives you a big, long, physical corner that you can go up the line of scrimmage and punch teams in the mouth now. It's expensive, but it's an upgrade.
It's going to be so much fun to watch this team play because we laughed ad nauseum at the fact, and we reiterated it all the time, that the Patriots just weren't good enough last year from a roster standpoint. And we saw they've got enough dogs to compete with NFL football teams. Obviously, they're an NFL team. They're all really talented. Well, now they just got a lot more talented guys. And to your point, some of the strong points of that defense are now bolstered by even other strong points within their position group. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch all 3 levels of this defense now. We're going to talk about another one of their guys here coming up shortly. But all 3 levels of that defense has been revamped. And they're going to play their nuts off for excuse my language. I know we're on the network today. Doggone it. They're going to play really hard for Mike Vrabel. And that's the way that the cookie crumbles every single time. And they've got archetype type guys, and this is one of them.
It is definitely a tone-setting piece. You wanted to play a certain brand of football. Carlton Davis brings that. Robert Spillane, who we're going to talk about a little bit later, Raiders linebacker, brings that. So you're changing the guard on defense and what the expectation is. And while I don't know if Carlton Davis, he's not the 6th best cornerback in the NFL. He's probably not a top 15 cornerback in the NFL. But I do think the interesting thing is every stop he's gone, he has been the number one corner, right?
He's had to guard the best.
Goes and follows, or is the guy who's expected to on third downs take the best wide receiver. That's for the first time in his career not the case, right? Going to New England, you got Christian Gonzalez. That's his bread and butter.
Go Ducks.
So as much as I think it might be a touch of an overpay, I can't really hate it. I'm gonna go B+ for this one.
I'm gonna go. I'll go B because I don't pay much attention to the secondary, as you understand. But this is a guy I know. And that's a guy that I enjoy watching play the game of football, Christian Gonzalez. And I know how multiple the defenses can be when you've got guys who can be really versatile and, to your point, can jam at the line of scrimmage, and they're just physically more gifted oftentimes than the guys across from them. It's a dangerous elixir that you can put into your defense, and it makes jobs as an offensive lineman even harder because guys are coming from places you don't expect them, and they can line up anywhere.
All right, the last top 25 free agent domino that's fallen so far. Trayvon Merrick comes in at 22 on Pete Prisco's list. The Raider safety, he's going to the Carolina Panthers on a 3-year, $51 million deal. That's a big deal at the safety position. Safety is obviously one of the lower paid positions in the NFL. Highest paid safety checks in at $21 million a year. So this makes him the 5th highest paid safety in the NFL, higher than Xavier McKinney got a year ago, higher than Jesse Bates is making. Obviously, any backwards comparison to contract 2 years ago or more is comical at this point with how NFL contracts have escalated. But it is still a ton of money for a guy who I like Merrick. I think he's a great box safety. I don't think he's the coverage guy that Xavier McKinney is that's going to justify this sort of deal. This is one of my first ones where I'm like, that's a lot for a non-premium position that I don't know if it moves the needle that much for you for the Carolina Panthers.
Well, and it's funny because when I think about the Carolina Panthers, they've had to defend the run so much. So I think that Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers got better offensively. Mm-hmm. In turn, the other team threw the football exponentially more than when they weren't able to move the ball offensively themselves. You would think that they would go out and get somebody who is that center fielder type, that is that type of guy who can help them out on third down, as opposed to a guy that's built for when the offense was anemic. And that's really what they ended up getting for Trayvon here. And $51 million. And what you said, he was making more than the Jesse Bates contract. And I almost had a stroke. And then you made the fair point of the escalating dollars year to year, and you can't compare backwards. But this is where we are now. This guy who played well last year, and I would say was less than that significantly in the years prior, has earned himself this deal. It's a what have you done for me lately deal. So for the Panthers, I'll give it a C+, B-.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we got a few more safeties to get to, a few more cornerbacks to get to as we roll through. We're going to go through the top 50 and then pick some of our favorites outside of that, or maybe some of our least favorites right after this.
Gives it to Jenkins for the championship. A 16 beats a 1. From sweet to elite to the Final Four.
Ironically, I just saw a deal come down as we went to break there. The Raiders are signing Jeremy Chin. So they traded safeties. The Raiders are signing the Panthers safety. The Panthers are signing the Raiders safety. We'll see who made the right call on that one next fall. All right, coming in at number 29 on Prisco's top free agents list, it's Cam Bynum, former Minnesota Vikings safety, now in Indianapolis Colt for 4 years, $60 million. And this is where I would have liked Merrick to come in, right? That's why I think 3 years, $751 is too much. 4 years, 60.
Stretch it over
about
4.
For similar sort of, I see Bynum and Merrick at a similar sort of level heading into free agency. Obviously, Pete did too. Had them 7 places apart. 4 years, 60 is much, much more reasonable for a guy with Bynum's skill set who's versatile in what he's capable of bringing to the table.
And I think about this guy, Cam Bynum. And not only has he been really good, really versatile for the Minnesota Vikings, but you have to understand the room that this guy came into, that secondary room. That's Harry the Hitman Smith's room. And there's nobody smarter in the National Football League, in my opinion, that I played against, especially in division. And the fact that he was still doing it at a high level these past few seasons speaks volumes about him. But Cam Bynum gets to take with him, just like Sam Darnold taking to the West Coast, the things he learned from Kevin O'Connell. You're going to have that in Indianapolis. And we already know that they've got some real winners in Indianapolis in the front 7. And to be able to add a piece like this on the back end is great. And anytime you have strengthened players at all 3 levels of the defense, it bodes well for you. And for Indianapolis, they're going to have to figure out some things offensively, but they went and got a good piece here with Bynum.
All right, next one up, number 33 on the list, former Saints corner Paulson Adebo heading to the New York Giants. 3 years, $54 million. I'm just going to say it. This is one of my first C's on the grading scale because to me, he's a little boomer bust on the outside. Not only that, he's coming off a broken femur. He did not play.
That's a big
after
bone.
Week 7 last year. That's something that obviously structurally the contract may have that factored in, and he may never see anywhere close to that 54 million. Who knows? But that's a big number for a guy like that, and feels just a little outsized for me. So I went C plus as my first one into the C's for anyone.
My buddy, who's a Giants fan named Peter, shout out Peter. And sometimes we've read some of his text messages on this show. I'm going to read another one today. I want to throw up on myself with the Giants free agency. Nobody wants to play there. And you talk about this guy, Paulson Adebo, and I hope his femur's
You wanted to play
well.
there.
I hope his femur's doing well. Well, I mean, they offered him 3 years, $54 million, Mike Renner. I'm on the first thing smoking out of the airport to go play for that. The upside for Giants fans is this. Cornerback is one of those positions that unless you're a premier superstar type player with a nickname or you're in the Pro Bowl with cool Oakleys on, you don't really know these cornerbacks. And for this guy, he's not that superstar player. He's probably not even a Pro Bowl alternate level player, but you get an opportunity to maybe, hopefully, get a guy who's ascending and he comes back healthy and he can help your defense. But, I mean, that's really all I've got to say about that. I had to do a little bit of research about this fella, but you got to just think about where he was playing, and not many folks were tuning in to watch him this past year, especially with all the things going on with the Saints. So you go to New York, we're going to find out if you said he's a boomer bust player. We're going to find out if he's a boomer bust personality, character traits, all that stuff gets exponentially shown in New York. So good luck to him.
All right, next one, 38. Former 49ers safety, former All-Pro, Talanoa
awesome.
Hufanga
This
goes
is
to the
perfect.
Denver Broncos. 3 years, $45 million. We got asked like a couple weeks ago, I think, on the show, how do the Broncos improve their run defense? What do they do at the safety position? This is a guy who will improve your run defense at the safety position.
This is a Leo meme.
Yeah, point. They're right at him. He's him. 3 years, $45 million. Now, again, another guy where serious buyer beware with injuries. He hasn't even played 1,000 snaps over the past 2 years. ACL in 2023, recovering from that, came back, wrist injury this past season, concussion this past season. The way he plays is not conducive to staying healthy on a football field. So one fully healthy season in 4 years. This is why he goes for 3 years, 45. But this guy has much more upside than that 3 years, 45. And I assume, given his injury history, that there are some, either low levels of guarantees or big insurance for injuries in the future. So all that being said, I like the move. This is a B plus for me. I think this is a low stakes way to have a potentially outsized impact on your run defense in 2025.
Without the injury concerns, this is a hard A for me. But with bearing those in mind, I am going to lean to the B's like you are here. And when I think about Sean Payton and his football teams, whether it's on the offensive or the defensive side of the ball, we know historically he's been part of some violent outfits. Need I say more? This guy fits the blueprint of what Sean Payton's teams are trying to be about. I mean, you look in the offensive backfield for Sean Payton, and there's a fullback more often than not. You don't think he likes a safety who wants to go up there and bruise guys up a little bit. And I think about those secondaries with a star like Pat Surtain and how special it is to have two corners that are good. And then you can throw into the equation a safety on the back end, and you've got a real Bermuda Triangle of hell for quarterbacks and receivers and anybody trying to play the game of football. I think secondary is such an important position. And for Talanoa Hufanga, obviously, the primetime thing is staying healthy. But I give it a B+.
Let's go on to number 42, Dan Moore Jr. To the Tennessee Titans, former Pittsburgh Steelers left tackle. He goes to Tennessee in a 4-year, $82 million deal. Not a typo. 4
Good
years
for him.
$82 million. That puts him now at the 6th highest paid tackle in the NFL. Left tackle, excuse me. 6th highest paid left tackle in the NFL. They obviously had a left tackle last year, their top 10 pick, J.C. Latham. J.C. Latham, though, was a right tackle at Alabama. Dan Moore's just been a left tackle. So I assume this means Latham goes back to the right side. That double team of Skoronski and Latham gone. But Dan Moore, now your starter. I want to hear your thoughts on this first, and then I'll give mine because mine are not
first and foremost,
for Titans fans.
Congratulations to Jeff Nally of CAA, who was not my agent for the entirety of my career, but my last deal with the Chiefs, 1-year deal, I used Jeff Nally. Great guy. I can see why he got $80 million. Congratulations to Dan Moore Jr. One stat that stuck out to me from your buddies over at PFF, and I'm not sure how this rubs you. Only 3 offensive tackles who gave up 10+ sacks according to PFF. Dan Moore gave up 12. That's a lot of sacks. And when you've got question marks at the quarterback position like the Titans do, and you've got potentially a very young guy in the building, the last thing you want to do is make him gun shy. And you can do so by having a revolving door at the offensive tackle position. I know I stress interior of the pocket being the main importance, but those offensive tackles are important too. And giving up 12 sacks, you kind of get used to losing a little bit as an offensive tackle. It takes a guy who's been there to be able to tell you about it. But when you do start to get beat over and over again, you start to get in your own head a little bit, and it can be tough to get out of that. I hope that with a new set of threads on and a new offensive line coach and a new everything, Dan Moore Jr. can turn this thing around and help out whoever it is that's playing the quarterback position for the Titans.
Yeah, that was the most sacks of any tackle in the NFL last year. So not good. Obviously, you're blocking for 2 guys who hold the football a little bit. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. Not always the most indicative. He is about as bad a starting tackle as you can get that you won't necessarily complain about. Like that,
$82 million.
And they paid $82 million for it. If this doesn't say to you,
I love football,
draft that offensive tackle. If you're debating, do I want an offensive tackle or another position? Draft the offensive tackle.
Way cheaper now.
So you don't have to go and spend $21 million for, I would conservatively put him as no better than the 18th best left tackle in the NFL.
Congrats to Jeff Nally and Dan Moore Jr.
All right, number 49 on this. Robert Spillane, linebacker. Oh, my grade for that one, Dan Moore, D+. Sad. Robert Spillane, linebacker for the Raiders, goes to the New England Patriots. 3 years, $37.5 million for Robert Spillane. I'm giving this one an A purely because you want Robert Spillane on your football team. I don't think
this is such an archetype grading by me and Renner, because I'm going to go A as well. It's just elevated Will Compton. It's like Michelin star Will Compton, and I love Will Compton, and I'd love to have him on my team. Would hate to play against the bastard. He doesn't want to meet me in the A gap, but I don't want to meet this guy Spillane in the A gap either. He's a problem, and we talked about the character fit, or not the character fit, but that motif, that theme that Vrabel's looking for. He just wants some dogs. And I'll tell you what, this guy Spillane has been a dog on some questionable football teams over the last couple of years. And I respect a man who shows up when even the sky is falling and plays his butt off. And that's what Spillane does week in, week out.
I mentioned Milton Williams, the signing. Would it improve their run defense? This signing improves your run defense. This guy will be a one-man run defense at times. He is awesome. Watched him play downhill. And everything you just said, I can echo. A signing. Next up, last one in the top 50. De'Ami Brown, Commanders wide receiver, goes to the Jaguars on a prove-it deal. 1 year, $10 million to play now with Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas Jr., Liam Cohen's offense. I love this for him. I love this for the Jags. Another one of my favorite signings. These are the ones where a guy, to me, he was better than his numbers suggested last year. You saw him down the stretch in the playoffs be a feature guy in the offense. It just was a run-heavy offense that kind of featured one wide receiver and not a lot of other people. So I'm a big fan of this deal. One of my favorite deals for agency so far. These are the ones where you can really make your money back on them, signings like this.
I said, great season in D.C. Wish he could stay with Jaden, but obviously excited to watch him go down to Jacksonville with this new look offense and the renaissance, hopefully, and what we've heard for Trevor Lawrence. And I just think about all the ways that he's going to be utilized. Like it's going to be like maybe Godwin-esque, hopefully, for the Tampa Bay or for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And my initial reaction is I'm saddened that I don't get to see De'Ami Brown continue to be there with Jaden Daniels because, like you said, they had some synergy there. There was something brewing in DC, but obviously things get split up, and hopefully he can continue to be on that ascent. And I mean, look, I'm in no way comparing Jaden Daniels to Trevor Lawrence, but not a bad gig here for De'Ami Brown, going from the young stud to kind of like the seasoned young stud there. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, De'Ami Brown over 200 yards in the
I'll give it a B
games.
Plus.
Okay. Over 200 yards in the 3 playoff games that the Commanders had. That actually was the most yards in a 3-game stretch in his career. So peaking kind of at the right time. And he's only 25 years old. Just turned
the anti-Sam Darnold.
Yeah. So, guys, Nestle's. All right, let's get to some of our favorites outside the top 50. Let's do this. You pick one, and then I'll pick one. And we'll go back and forth a few times till we hit some of these interesting ones outside the top 50. So who you got that you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Justin Fields. Can I talk about Justin Fields for a minute?
Let's talk about him. He's at 51.
Okay, so Justin Fields is one of the most fun people to watch play the game of football. And whether it's comically good, like you laugh and you say to yourself, like, you should not be able to throw that football or you should not be able to spin out of that tackle. If things go right in New York, which is obviously capital, italicized, underlined, because of the history of the New York Jets, this could be the biggest signing of the offseason. And it'll slide right in there. 2 years, $40 million. Congratulations to Justin for getting paid again. Good for him. I just think that the guys in the locker room that play with Justin Fields, they rally around him. I've never been in a locker room with him. I know he's a quiet guy. He's understated. He's emotionally, like, he's just flatline all the time. But you watch him play football, and he's a live wire. And for a New York fan base who has had some lackluster quarterbacking over the last however many years, this guy will bring you electricity every single weekend. I'm excited about it. And you know that defense is going to come to play regardless. But with him at the quarterback position, I think they'll be even more fired up. The team will rally around him.
I think after this signing, too, I feel, I won't say confident, but I feel strongly that number 7 overall now is an offensive lineman. I don't think they're trading Garrett Wilson. You literally have his college teammate on the roster now. I don't think you're trading Garrett Wilson. And I think that you are taking a more run-heavy approach because you have such a talented running back in Breece Hall, and because you're so close along the offensive line to having one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. You're really just missing the right tackle position. So would not be surprised at all if Armand Membu, Missouri OT, ends up being the pick at 7, and you're just rolling with what's trying to be what they had in Detroit. You know, the Detroit Exodus. Your new OC is from Detroit. Your new head coach is from Detroit. I think they're going to try to replicate what they had there, which is a strong run attack, and everything else flows off of that. So I don't mind it. I don't mind it for the Jets. My one I want to talk about, and I've been burning to talk about it all day long with someone. Aaron freaking Banks, Golden Domer to the Green Bay Packers. You see the number there on your screen. I'm waiting for someone to say, like, sorry, that was misreported. But 4 years, $77 million. The Green Bay Packers, and Aaron Banks could be a great guard. This is nothing against him. One, though, he's been an okay guard at best over the course of his career. 2, there's not a lot of positions that the Green Bay Packers are deep at. They are deep at offensive guard. They have 3 guards on their roster, so much so that they couldn't even put their first-round pick from a year ago on the football field. You had Elgton Jenkins, you have Sean Ryan, you have Jordan Morgan. Elgton can maybe play left tackle or center. Jordan Morgan and Sean Ryan are guards. Aaron Banks is a guard. Those guys are not playing other positions on the football field.
They've got serious question marks in that building. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So
either you're relegating your first rounder from a year ago to backup status,
or
something is happening here that I have no clue. So I'd love to
That
hear.
that seems to
your
well,
take.
you can't ask the owner because there's 50 million
Well, it's
owners
me.
of the Green
It's
Bay
me. I'm the owner.
Packers. Yeah, like I got to call a million people to get the answer, but it leads me to believe that there's some confidence issues in one of those guys. And if you think it's going to be Jordan Morgan, then that's a real shame because we like Jordan Morgan and we'd love to see him play. And you know what, Jordan, if you do end up being the backup, you can just drive south and we'll just kick Joe Tooney out there to left tackle. And we'll figure that one out.
All right. Which one do you want to talk about?
I thought it was interesting to see Braxton Berrios go to the Houston Texans. That was interesting because the numbers obviously towards the bottom of the list. Yeah, Braxton Berrios, really great guy. We met him, very handsome. He looked great though, didn't he? Physically,
yeah.
Guy takes himself, takes it seriously. I can promise you, CJ Stroud will find a way to get him the football, and. Just overall, the Bears, their ability to go out and be aggressive this offseason was really nice. And we hear horror stories all the time about teams that wait too long to re-sign guys or go out and sign guys in free agency. Ryan Poles was not sitting on his hands. It feels like a situation where he knows that the seat's not hot, but they have the ability to crank that thing up real quick with how things have gone early. I'm proud of the moves that they've made, and they've invested in that offensive line. They've taken care of Caleb Williams, and hopefully that offense under new Ben Johnson's regime, it'll be completely different. The Patriots, obviously, I've talked at length about today. I'm just going to reiterate the fact that I think that they are capital W winning right now in terms of the offseason. They're adding studs across the board, and with that guy, Drake May, he's going to take a big leap next year. We can all kind of feel it. He's ready to be the dude there, and he showed that this season. It could be scary in New England. They could turn it around pretty quick.
Yeah, New England, I like what they've done in free agency. They obviously had to spend a ton of money. Like it was foregone conclusion that was going to happen. But I liked how they've attacked so far. And I think they have guys who play a brand of football that Mike Vrabel is going to want to instill there. So all good things in that front. The Bears are the one that's interesting for me to talk about because I love what they've done rebuilding that O-line. No qualms about that. But what they're doing along the defensive line, I'm not as certain of. Grady Jarrett, 3 years, $43.5 million. I love Grady Jarrett. I loved him coming out of Clemson. I thought he was underdrafted by at least 3 rounds, if not 4. The guy was great. In retrospect, It was 4. I mean, he went in the 5th round. That guy goes in the 1st round all day, every day. But he's 32 years old this upcoming season. Objectively, coming off one of his rougher seasons of his career, does not looks like he's on a downslide. In 3 years, $43.5 million.
I want to see how it's structured.
Yes. I mean, obviously there's that.
This is the one where you're like, show me the deets. I need the deets.
But it's like, does anyone think 34-year-old Grady Jarrett's playing out whatever that last year of that contract is? It just signing contracts where you're going to cut a guy shortly after. I just never think that's necessarily good business. So that one, TBD.
So last year he was coming off an ACL. So he had an ACL in 23. So last year was his first year coming off the ACL. We saw another guy coming off an Achilles at 40. So pump the brakes on, the Grady Jarrett thing. The question I have is Dayo Odeyingbo.
Yes.
Dayo Odeyingbo. Okay.
Dayo Odeyingbo.
They don't have a lot of home run hitters right now in terms of guys who can actually go get the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. They've got a lot of guys that can rush. And you look at the roster, the depth chart, you're like, oh, we got winners here. They don't have anybody over like 8 sacks, 7 sacks. You would think that they would go get somebody who just specializes in going to get the quarterback. And Odeyingbo, the slight on this guy is that he doesn't get the quarterback. That's like the red flag in his file. I'm interested to see if they can have some untapped talent there with him, the ability to get the quarterback, because they're going to be in shootouts. They need to make stops. And how are they going to generate that from pass rush and the ability to get that quarterback on the ground? Because we saw in the Super Bowl, even Patrick Mahomes is not immune to being pressured down in, down out without having to blitz. Got to find a way to get winners on the defensive front.
So Dangbo, his story or his path to here was he was a young player coming out, tore his Achilles in the Senior Bowl, basically made his whole rookie season a wash, but incredible physical tools, 6'6", 286, I believe one of the largest wingspans ever measured at the combine for a defensive lineman, over 7 feet. Mammoth human being, inside outside versatility, but still kind of a work in progress. This past year, 42 pressures. Like, he's not a pure pass rusher, not a pure run defender either, because he is kind of out of place on the interior, and not a guy you want playing in space. So he's kind of that tweener build.
He's not a fat guy. He's not a fat guy, but he's not like a Leonard Floyd lean 6'4". He's a guy that is like probably a 3-4 type body, 2-gap type body that's playing out of scheme.
So you're kind of buying that, hey, this kind of progression we've seen from early in his career to year 3, year 4. What could year 5 look like if this guy really puts it together? So it's definitely a speculative contract, but you're the Bears. You needed all the help you could get along your defensive line. So they took some shots. I love what they did O-line. D-line, I'm just a little bit more skeptical.
Question marks.
Yes. So the one I wanted to get your thoughts on too, and I can't believe you didn't bring this one up, Jalen Moore to the Kansas City Chiefs. We knew they were cap strapped. We knew it was going to be tough for them to fit anyone in offensive line-wise help. That's why they traded Joe Thuney in the first place. They give Jalen Moore a 2-year, $30 million deal. The guy who spelled Trent Williams at left tackle the past couple seasons when he was hurt. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think it's an immediate thing that the Chiefs had to address. In the building, we don't quite know. I mean, we can guess as to how they felt about Wanye Morris or Kingsley Suamataia because of the brevity in which we saw them on the field before they threw their all-pro left guard, Joe Thuney, to left tackle. So the answer was, I don't want to say clearly, but the answer was probably going to be outside of the building. And for them to be able to bring in Jalen Moore, to be that blindside protector, it's just one thing they can check off the box in terms of being like, okay, this was something we had to do. And he has enough film, to your point, spelling Trent Williams, to be able to say confidently, Andy Heck probably took a long look at the tape and was like, this I can work with. These young guys, I've got to figure out how to get them right. And the other players in the room have to figure out how to bring them up to our speed. But this guy can sign and play immediately. And, good for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to need a lot more help, in my opinion. Losing Thuney is a great bleed for that offense. And, the hive mind that is the Kansas City offense got a little bit worse without Thuney. But you get a little bit of that back here with Jalen.
Yeah, to me, you're not going to fix the O-line. One guy coming in ain't going to fix it. I think they're just going to throw the kitchen sink at it. It's not just going to be Jalen Moore. Wouldn't be surprised if they made another budget signing along the offensive line, and they wouldn't be surprised if within the first 4 rounds you get 2 more offensive linemen in the fold just to get some competition in there, just to see what cream rises to the top, and to have some depth in terms of, one guy isn't working out, switch to another. One guy gets hurt. We're not completely to our knees along the offensive line.
And don't forget how much these offensive tackles are worth annually. I mean, the fact that they got 2-year, $30 million deal, that's $15 million a year. That's not an astronomical number. And if the Chiefs got this thing right, that's going to be a huge steal for them. And another one of those Brett Veach moves that, maybe people aren't completely sure about, but when he's up there hemming guys up at Arrowhead Stadium and Mahomes is throwing it right behind his right ear hole to Rashee Rice, people are just going to not even bat an eye about the move.
Let's get to one last team here before we take a break. Los Angeles Rams make 2 signings worth talking about. Poona Ford at defensive tackle, 3 years, $30 million, and Devontae Adams, 2 years, $46 million. I kind of love both deals. Because one, the Adams deal is set up very for backloaded. It is a $14 million cap hit this year. If they cut him, then really only $12 million of dead money the next season. So not a big deal. $30 million cap hit in 2026 if he really still has a lot in the tank and really still is playing. And then Poona Ford, 3 years, $30 million, man. This guy's been one of the most underrated DTs in the NFL for years and just fits in there all these short kings on that Rams defensive line, all these like undersized leverage gods. I think this is he's going to fit right in there.
Poona Ford. Okay, because you were talking about this guy, Devontae Adams. I never heard about him. But I wanted to talk about this Poona Ford character and the amazing deal that the Rams were able to get. And just like we've seen year in, year out, the Los Angeles Rams find a way to reload, retool, and add to an already strong unit. A couple notes I wrote down for Poona Ford. Doesn't have to move. Still lives in L.A.
That's nice.
Paid.
Underrated aspect.
Going to a Super Bowl contender now, not just an up-and-coming program where you feel like every week you're just on a razor's edge and, every single thing matters. Every single thing still matters with the Los Angeles Rams, but I can promise you under Sean McVay and with a guy like Matt Stafford in the building and the leadership group they already have in that defensive line room, he's going to fit right in. It's going to be it's probably going to be a breath of fresh air for him, I would imagine, because Harbaugh strikes me as just an absolute hard ass. It's Verse, Turner, Fisk, and Ford. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, just like we've seen with the St. Louis Rams when it was my older brother Chris and Robert Quinn and Michael Brockers, and then they brought Aaron Donald into the fold, and there have been name after name. The Rams have always done it this way. The more the merrier in that defensive line room. And I think about this Rams team, they were one Jalen Carter play away from being the NFC representatives, and they're going to have a shot to go back at it again this year.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, we have some trades, some extensions, some releases, and some re-signings to roll through. Coming up next.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale. Ronaldo. Wonderful goal.
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
We're going to start with the DK Metcalf trade. Goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a second-round pick and then signs a 5-year, $150 million deal. Whew. What are your thoughts on this one? Because I am still waiting for like a shoe to drop here. He and George Pickens, there's not a lot of receivers in the NFL with more similar skill sets and more similar route trees that they run. Like, yeah, you can have both in your offense, but they're not necessarily complementary. And I'm not sure that either is necessarily, I mean, DK is happy about the contract he got, but I'm not sure either is happy with splitting targets with similar guy on the opposite side here.
Are they going to have to line up next to each other and just give each other like catty looks the whole pre-snap situation? I think about whether or not they have a sports psychologist on staff, and I immediately say, if you don't have one, hire two. These two guys, as we talk about all the time, are as talented as anybody in the National Football League. And the next statement I'm about to make leans more towards our guy, Jorge Pickens, who is incredible to watch, but at any given moment could become checked out mentally and affect your entire team's offense, which is built around the talent that George Pickens is. So to add another fiery, explosive guy who is, potentially 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, or potentially 5 targets, 2 catches, 2 personal fouls, I'm not quite sure that it fits the right way. My question is, who's going to be throwing these guys the football? Who's going to be leading this wagon week in, week out? Because if you do have the right voice in the leadership position, in the huddle, I can see a world where DK Metcalf and George Pickens are, Batman and Robin, or 2 more equal characters. But they're superhuman in talent, and it's going to be so much fun to watch the Steelers play offense again.
Oh, dude, I mean, the tea leaves are Aaron Rodgers, right? There's not really. I mean, Russell Wilson. I do think Russell Wilson with DK and George Pickens, like those are 2 guys who set up well for a skill set. Moonballs. Rodgers would work too, though. But who's signing up for whatever that's going to be on a week in, week out basis? George Pickens and DK Metcalf.
Aaron's going to bring a Brinks truck, and there's not going to be money in it. There's going to be 1,000 tons of ayahuasca, and they're going to have a big sit down, a powwow. They're going to get it all out. They're going to answer any questions that one another might have. And I think
they're going to share a brain.
He could shaman them through this season. It could be fun.
Dude, I mean, if anyone can keep him in line, I mean, Mike Tomlin, I trust too, but like, this is going to be a tough ask. It's going to be a tough ask. All right, the other trade we didn't get to over the course of the weekend, Geno Smith moved for only a 3rd round pick from Seattle to the Las Vegas Raiders for now to play on 1-year deal in Las Vegas, $31 million. I assume the Raiders will try to work out an extension at some point here with him. You didn't give up a 3rd rounder just for a 1-year rental, but maybe they did. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, my thoughts are the Las Vegas Raiders had to get better at the quarterback position. They had zero stability at the position. You bring a guy like Tom Brady into the ownership fold, and immediately the priority becomes we've got to find a guy who, if it's not our guy for the future, can be the guy for now, leading into who we're going to go get. Geno Smith is a guy that's really talented, and he has been great in big situations. He's a clutch player. He's a guy that hasn't had that superstar treatment his entire career. He's had quite an arc to get to where he is today. I think it's big for the Las Vegas Raiders. Their offense will look more like an NFL offense, and they'll be able to do things week in, week out to be competitive in such a tough division. I think it's important to have a guy who can throw the ball all around the yard, and you're going to be having to match production with guys like Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, and obviously Bo Nix is coming right up the totem pole as well.
I love this move for the Raiders. I can't believe he only went for a 3rd round pick with the desperation that's existing around the NFL. And I don't think this precludes them from taking a quarterback in the draft, but it does at 6. You can still take one, 4th round, day 3, something like that. Just throw a flyer out there, especially in this class we've talked about. There's just a lot of guys who played a lot of football who maybe are worth like taking a chance on the 4th and could become a starter. But compared to any of those guys that you would have been taking at number 6 overall, this is so much better of an option, in my opinion. This provides so much more stability. And yeah, I mean, he's 34, about to turn 35. You got probably 3 to 4 useful years out of him that you can like bank on. This is the most excited Raiders have probably been about the quarterback position since like 2018. It's been a while. So I'm very happy for Raiders fans.
Coach Mack up in Seattle about a month ago, he said, and I quote, "I don't understand the conversation about Geno Smith. It's pretty obvious this guy's a heck of a quarterback. He's our quarterback. We love him. Can't wait to go back to work with him. I just want you to understand, they do not care about you. And if you're not exactly what they want, you're going to be gone. You're going to be in another set of colors. And it's just, something I thought I'd point out, man. These don't even watch the press conferences. I would say,
right?
You're wasting your time. You're just wasting your time. It's brain rot.
It's like listening to the CIA press conferences.
Yeah, they're just telling you nothing.
They're paid to not tell you what's actually going on. So maybe don't think that what they're telling you is what's actually going on. Some extensions to get to. I'll list the big ones. You tell me any you want to discuss. J.C. Horn, former top 10 pick of the Carolina Panthers, gets a 4-year, $100 million deal. I believe that makes it the 2nd highest paid cornerback in the NFL at this point. So that's nice for him. We have Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills quarterback. We had Jonathan Jones on the program at the Combine. He said, don't be surprised if it happens, given how underpaid he was. Well, at 6 years, $333 million. I don't think that's the case anymore. You have Myles Garrett, 4 years, $123 million. Everyone thought that, after he requested a trade, that he might be out the door. Well, they just went ahead and made him the highest paid defensive end by like $5
This
million.
one doesn't make sense to me.
Why not?
Okay. Because if I'm Myles Garrett and I pick up the red phone in the locker room, which is talking to the people upstairs, and you're like, I could be happier elsewhere. I'd like an opportunity to win. To me, that doesn't scream, I want to be the highest paid player. I want to play for a winning team. So now you've put yourself back into a situation in Cleveland, and you've perpetuated the same things that you've complained about, because with $123 million going out the door to your bank account, that's less guys we can pay for the Cleveland Browns. They're still stuck into that shitty contract with the quarterback. And it just seems like what are those carousels? You're just going around and around for 4 more years. I hope the money makes it worth it. Myles Garrett is a day one Hall of Famer and probably the most talented, one of the most physically gifted humans I've ever watched play the game of football. I'm excited for Cleveland and all the kids that grew up Myles Garrett fans. But there's a part of me that wishes that this young man had the opportunity to be on a team that was vying for the Super Bowl. And I feel like a lot of football fans may share that same sentiment as I do. The other guy, and it's funny because this is kind of a similar situation. Max Crosby, 3 years, $106 million. It's that, but it's not the same because the Raiders are making big changes. And I don't quite feel that from the Cleveland Browns yet. So for Max Crosby, I like to see a guy just like Myles Garrett be paid what he has earned over the course of his career. But yeah, those are my thoughts. Myles Garrett, I'm a little bit confused by that. Congratulations on the deal. That's unbelievable. And for Max Crosby, shout out to Max. What a gangster. He's going to stay in Vegas. That's another player where I'm like, he could be on the Detroit Lions. He could be on this team or that team, but he's not. He's going to be where he's at.
I think we should also not listen to in the future player statements. Player statements when they request
throw all
trade.
the microphones away.
Dude, when they request a trade, they will say anything. And at the end of the day, it's to eke out $5 million more in a contract negotiation. That's what it is. They will say, I hate this city. I want to go play for a winner. They haven't respected me. If they get X amount of more dollars in their bank account, they come crawling back. And
they love that city.
Oh, they committed. They showed that they're committed to building a winner and gave me the most money in NFL history for a defensive end. So I think we've been fooled enough to say that when a guy says he wants out, we all just know. Speaking of some other new re-signings that happened, not free agent signings, guys that went back to their original teams. Ronnie Stanley, maybe having some regrets at this point, seeing how the tackle market shook out. But he goes 3 years, $60 million to go with the Ravens at 31 years old this year. Going to be, looks like, a Raven for life now at this point. Good for him.
Great for him.
All sides. This made sense. Obviously, if you've been in an organization long enough, you will be a legend if you finish out your career there. Ronnie Stanley's been awesome, as everything you'd expect, everything you'd want when you draft an offensive tackle in the top 10. So this one, I mean, about a lot of these re-signings, we're going to be like A+. When you keep your guys at home and when you give them, when you beat the free agency market, beat them to the punch, you tend to get deals in terms of the money you're making. Ronnie Stanley, awesome.
And there's a reason that this re-signings list is nowhere near as long as the free agent list that we saw, because this shit right here is hard to do. It's hard to not only get paid these big, sign these big deals, play for 3, 4, 5 years sometimes, but then you played so well on your team that you're respected by management, ownership, and the coaching staff that they're like, no, we want that guy back. And Ronnie Stanley has been awesome. To your point, you draft a guy that highly. I remember him being a dancing bear at draft night. He came out with the shiny shoes, and I was like, man, I hope this guy can play because those shoes are shinier than shit. He went out there and played his ass off for a long time. He's been great for the Ravens. A guy like Lamar Jackson appreciates having Ronnie Stanley back. The people that play with and practice with and against Ronnie love having him back. The other guy on the list, Zach Bond, we're going to get to here. But that's a guy who earned it. I mean, 3 years, $51 million to go back and be the leader of that Zach Bond defense in the middle of the field. It's an important signing. It's one that you and I said has to happen, especially with other guys going out the door for Philadelphia. So Zach Bond, Eagles, 3 years, $51 million, man.
Are we a little surprised that Bond, 3 years, $51 million, and I'll also throw Jamie and Sherwood in there for the Jets. Two guys who are pretty much one-year wonders. Sherwood had been with the Jets, played kind of in a backup role his first 3 seasons, but first year last year that he really was a starter for an extended period of time. Awesome as a starter. But are you a little surprised that those guys kind of hit towards the top of the market at their respective positions at linebacker, even off a 1 year of play?
Well, that's like your guy, the receiver from the Raiders. What's the guy's name that just got signed? We were talking about him about 40 minutes ago. The receiver from the Raiders that ended up going to the Panthers, Morik.
Oh, safety.
Safety. Sorry, safety. He had a good year last year. relative to his other years, and he was given a big deal. And this is a what have you done for me lately league. So I think for a guy like Sherwood, I think for a guy like Vaughn especially, who was unbelievable. Like we've said, he should have been a DPOY. Like if they had a Heisman ceremony for DPOY, he should have been right there in one of those chairs. You have to pay a guy like that. It's not, you can't hold that year against him. I mean, he's earned it, and for Sherwood as well. These guys have been great, albeit for 1 year. In Bond's case, he's in a new position. In Sherwood's case, he was in a new situation. Every year is different. Every situation is different physically, schematically. You think about what that Jets defense went through with their staff. That's a shit deal. And to play well, to have a guy like Sherwood to be able to come to the Jets, it gives a lot more stability there.
I think there's certain positions that it's also hard to fake being good at. Like wide receiver, you can have 1 year wonders who produce if they're in the right scheme, if they're featured correctly. Running backs, same. Linebacker is not as easy to fake. You're not walking into sacks. You're not walking into 120 plus tackles. A lot of times that takes ability. And so to do what those guys did, yeah, I think it's more a sign of things to come. And I think those
you're born a good linebacker.
Steals.
I think that linebackers are born.
Not creative.
You cannot make a linebacker. You can have guys out there wearing 54 and making tackles, but Roquan Smith dropped out of his mama, Roquan Smith. You know what I'm saying? And Zach Bond didn't even realize that he was Zach Bond until Vic Fangio was like, no, you are Zach Bond.
And now, one of the highest paid linebackers in the NFL. So well deserved. All right, Osa Digizua, 4 years, $80 million. I believe we touched on that last week.
Yep.
Really touched on enough. Chris Godwin, this one came down today. Buccaneers wide receiver, stays with the Bucs. I think a lot of people surprised by this. 3 years, $66 million. We thought with the emergence of Jalen McMillan that he could be out the door, could be getting more money elsewhere, and apparently was. Declined it to go back, be a Tampa Bay Buc. This has kind of been the theme of the Bucs. Haven't had a lot of guys walk out that door in recent years, despite being cap strapped. A lot of guys want to stay around. What do you think about this deal? Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would have done this if I was the Bucs. I think I would have prioritized money elsewhere.
This just feels like the Bucs taking care of a guy who's given them everything. And there are organizations out there that still take care of their own. And Chris Godwin has given his body up for this football team and has been so steady a performer for them. And you got to think he's somebody that makes being the coordinator his life really easy, to have a guy like Chris Godwin out there who can do so many multiple things. They've obviously seen him recovering really well and think he's in a good spot physically. And they're willing to take this bite out of the apple for a guy that's been a big part of their offense.
Yes, his deal, and also Nick Bolton, who's the 14th best free agent on Pete Prisco's free agent list. They both felt kind of similar deals where it's like they weren't really hometown discounts and weren't really in situations where these were guys that they had to have. Like the Chiefs have other linebackers.
Well, they took care of these guys.
They took care of them because of who they are in those locker rooms.
Yes.
And that is what good organizations do. If you have a guy who's truly a leader, truly a guy that makes things tick on a day-to-day basis, just let him walk out the door over a couple $1 million or over, XYZ. Just keep that guy around as long as possible because he will continue to set that tone through good and through bad. So as much as like you can look at the Nick Bolton deal in the vacuum and be like, I don't think he's worth that much. He is to the Chiefs. He's
a leader. He is a leader and has been since he got off the bus for rookie minicamp. And I think you and I have talked about this, but that linebacker position, he's one of those guys that was just born and he was a linebacker.
All right. Next one, Alaric Jackson.
This is big.
20th on Pete Prisco's. He goes back to the Rams. 3 years, $57 million. Love this from the Rams perspective.
Yep.
I mean, this guy outplayed Dan Moore Jr. last year by pretty much any metric you want to point to, the tape being the one I'm pointing to. But
and this happened early. This happened early in the process. So the Rams knew it was. The Rams were like, no, we're not going to be out there courting anybody. We're going to just make our offer to Alaric and take care of him. And he was a guy that probably was playing above his contract, and now he's probably right about where he should be.
Yep. Last one. Khalil Mack to the Los Angeles Chargers. 1 year, $18 million deal. Kind of feels like, dare I say, a last hurrah, that like this is it for Khalil, that it's after this year, because he's what now? 34 years old. Will be 35 next year. On a 1 year deal, 18 million. He still was good though last year. I thought could have commanded more. I thought someone would go like to 2 years 40, 3 years 60 for a guy like that, just because of, we saw Von Miller at a similar age still get big contracts, still get like multiple year contracts too from the Buffalo Bills. But for the Chargers, this has to be a big win. This was your one guy you wanted to bring back, and you got cap space now. They're going to be big players in this free agency. There's no way they're done after this.
So out in the ocean, if you go stand at a beach somewhere and you look out, you'll just see wave after wave after wave. And apparently, if you stay at a beach long enough, you might see a rogue wave, which is bigger, faster, stronger, more dangerous. Khalil Mack is a rogue human. I've been around a lot of guys, and akin to the conversation we had about Myles Garrett, when you talk about a guy just being built from twisted steel, Khalil Mack's the same way. And even at that age, he can still go out there and get it done, because he's not just relying on his first step being the quickest. He's not just relying on, being able to run 40 yards faster than the other guy. The dude is grown man strong. He understands how to toss his weight around, use his leverage. I still remember him throwing Tristan Wirfs like 7 yards in 2018, I think it was, or whenever it was. You're not supposed to be able to do to people what Khalil Mack can do from a strength standpoint, point of attack. That's big in that Chargers locker room. I can already tell you, in that meeting room, Khalil's one of those guys is the spearhead at the point of attack, and a lot of guys learn from him. So for him, great job. And to your point, the number could be bigger. It's $18 million. Could have been, 22?
Yeah, I thought so. But so for the Chargers, they've been going budget deal. They did another with Dante Jackson that we haven't touched on, but that's going to be their strategy, and paid off for them last year. I think it's going to keep paying off dividends. So hats off to them. I said that was the last one, but we just had one more come down the pipe that I got to mention. Nate Hobbs, Raiders corner, going to the Green Bay Packers. They address corner. He's been kind of a slot over the course of his career there. Packers have a slot cornerback in Javon Bullard, who they drafted in the second round last year. Interesting to see where he fits in, but it's only 4 years, $48 million. A much more palatable price point here than what they got in Aaron Banks. So we'll see how that works out for them. That's our show, though. We'll be back doing this every single day, 4 p.m. Eastern. Make sure to check it out. Until then, we'll be giving out some grades at the end of the week for all the teams. Keep pushing.